So you're working on this one. Can I bring it back to you? When you took office, you were not only young, you're also a woman.
Right.
I mean, are these both pluses or minuses?
Actually, I think that whoever gets to be appointed in a position of importance must adjust considering her constraints. I did not consider my being young as an inherent obstacle. I thought that there were things that I had to adjust more and that my expectations had to be lowered because of that. A very senior justice would naturally be treated very differently from one who is young. And the position does not automatically carry with it all the traditions of the past. So you have to earn the respect of people and show your leadership. I had to make a distinction between ambient noise, which I thought would be brought about by emotions, brought about by failed expectations, and the tasks that really needed doing. What was very good is that when I show focus on the work ahead, and I make it a point to emphasize that it is a collective responsibility of the court. You had everybody behind you. There would be no dissent on what was necessary to be done in order to provide justice to our people. Maybe there would be proposals on alternative approaches to things. Maybe there would be a reference to the solution that had been done in the past. But ultimately, it would be a collective decision. And this is something I am very proud of. That this court, regardless of the fact that a lot of emotions accompanied my appointment.
You rise from nowhere, right?
Well, yes, you're actually accurate there. Actually proved to be professional in every sense.
So even choosing to do a collegial kind of consensus body in the Supreme Court, that's also your choice. Does that come from being both young and being a woman and turning it, or is this your personality? What led you here? What were the biggest challenge you faced when you came in and you realized you had this body?
I think it was a very realistic appraisal of my situation that led me to conclude that the only way to lead is by consensus. And for the lower court employees and for the other judges, to lead by example. So by consensus and by example. And I thought that maybe the fact that there are alternative views, instead of being rejected outright by me, actually provided a better alternative. Wisdom is not the monopoly of any one person. I think that when a course of action has to be adjusted because there are dangers being pointed out to you by your colleagues, then it would be wise to listen to those warnings. And that is one thing I appreciate from my colleagues, that the discussion in the en banc has been very, very dynamic. Everyone has been free to give his input, because when I was appointed as Chief Justice, I thought that I would encourage as much discussion as possible, and it has happened. So what you have are more ideas being pushed more aggressively, more cooperation from the ground, and I always carry the message that the secret to reform is in the individual who will be involved on the ground himself. It must be owned by every stakeholder. It cannot be only attributed to one person. That's not a smart way to bring about transformational changes. But rather, when the individual sees that it is in his best professional interest, it aligns with his values, the values that he carried with him to the judiciary. That's why he joined in the first place. That the best way to deliver justice is what must always be consistently sought, and it must be done in a community where you share your expectations, and you pinpoint responsibilities very carefully. You know, it has been very fast. I cannot believe that in the 3 years I have been here, the changes would be embraced by employees in this manner. For example, the problems that I have right now, Maria, is the change. The projects are not being brought to localities fast enough. The problem is how to manage expectations and demands that the same kind of support system being carried out in the reform areas will also be carried out as fast as possible to the farthest courts that we have. If that is not such a happy problem to have, I don't know what is a happy problem. So I am welcoming all of this, and the pressure is enormous, and because the hope, you can really feel it. It's in the air. They want you so much to succeed. So you don't want to fail the people, but at the same time you recognize that not all the factors are within your control. For example, we must have the prosecution and the public defenders very tightly working with us. You have to have the investigative forces and the law enforcement forces very, very tightly also working, not on the merits of any particular case, but on the process itself. So I carry the message even when I talk with the prosecutors and the public attorneys and the police in the Justice Sector Coordinating Council, that this should be seen as a justice sector movement to bring justice to people. And we should no longer be thinking in terms of silos, where we think that our terms of reference ends here and I don't really care about what happens to the other branches. No, we must care, and we must show our people that we care enough so that we talk, we coordinate, we harmonize our rules to the extent where it is possible, all because you want the system to make sense. And it will never make sense if we keep on thinking in silos. So we're doing that right now.
That's a massive culture change in a bureaucracy that has had a lot of problems to deal with. What pushed that culture change forward? I mean, obviously your personality, you said you lead by example, but how were you able to do it?
I appointed for myself to ensure that I don't breach the line of judicial independence. I appointed a conscience person. I call her a resident ombudsman for judicial independence. So that whenever I'm talking to anyone in the other branches, I will keep on asking her, am I already breaching the limit? Well, the point is I always must be aware of the limit of cooperation. And I encourage the Department of Justice to likewise also observe that limit. So we are careful whenever we have an agreement to always emphasize the professional independence of each agency. At the same time, recognizing that the only way you can work in order to bring about justice is to have coordination in specific areas. So the demarcation where we can have joint activities is made clear for every activity node. So I thought that we can defend it even when there is already someone who might ask our whether we are too partial to the Department of Justice. I keep on telling them the Department of Justice itself has two colliding agencies that it is supervising, the National Prosecution Service and the Public Attorney's Office. But the thing is that we must not let these formal problems stand in the way of finding good solutions. And it has been the cry of our people for the longest time. So it has been working very well. And this is something that the court is very proud of.
You've incorporated technology. I mean, a lot of the solutions that you found use technology.
Yes.
Youth or gender? I mean, why? I mean, I suppose partly because you're young, the technology is there. How do you choose the solutions?
I'm very sensitive to communication, for example, and I have to recognize that today's people communicate, work, live, play in ways different from how they used to do that. And it is wrong to ignore that environment. So one philosophy should be, how do we best parlay these technological opportunities into the best way of serving justice? And I thought that it is because we are an archipelago of 1,700 plus islands with more than 700 trial court stations nationwide, that makes the use of technology even more imperative than it would be for other countries that are landlocked. And so that is important to me. And I thought initially that there would be strong resistance from judges that are, let's say, 50 and above to technology. But now you know what they're saying? Those where we have the electronic court system, they cannot imagine ever working in an environment that is not automated.
Fantastic. Being a woman, you were the only Chief Justice who is a woman in Southeast Asia.
Yes.
One of 3 in Asia Pacific.
Yes.
What kinds of pluses and minuses does this bring to you? How do you feel?
I think what the female side of my brain integrates the soft and hard parts of a situation very well. In other words, linear thinking is appropriate for plotting charts and etc. But you know what, my approach is, if you're going to look at a technology, an application, it's mind mapping.
Yes.
So it's a very intuitive. It's more feminine than masculine. Would you agree with that?
I agree.
And that is how I approach things. An idea cannot be pushed until there is already a buy-in. And the buy-in will be a mixture of the intuitive, emotional, even economic interests at play, that are not discrete in a particular individual, because they are always in a sense of movement, even inside an individual. And when individuals meet, that will also move. So I have quite a strong sense of the collective feel for something, and I think that, and then I am able to show that I speak from within. Some say from the heart, then, because I appeal to, I think it's important to appeal to the deepest values of people. At the end of the day, what is a system? What is a justice system if it is not made of people who are trying to mimic, to the extent possible, a sense of fairness, uprightness, and the appropriate recompense in a world that they collectively call the world of justice?
Fantastic. You may be one of the few people who cannot or will not be swayed by vested interests. At least you're in that position now. How do you maintain that? Because certainly in a country like the Philippines, where institutions have been weak, these vested interests come at you in different ways. You live in this country. How do you maintain your independence?
When I was interviewed for the Chief Justice position, I mentioned 7 principles that I live by, but I thought that I would summarize them now for you, for this interview. And I thought that it would be, I use the principle of self-limiting. In other words, I limit my wants, I limit my associations so that I can be freer. So if I say I will live within much below my means, I will associate with less people than I can actually associate with. If I tie myself to less interests than are attractive to me at the moment, that means, and if I do not attach myself to a particular opinion at this particular point in time, my ability to respond to the call for an impartial adjudication will be multiplied in many ways. So it is also a process of self-examination, seeing in my heart what binds me, what enshackles me. So the difficult part about this is that it has also to be embraced by my own family, because that is where my deepest affections lie. So my husband has to have that also. My children also understand the limitations that are naturally there simply because they are associated with me.
And your family adheres to that. I mean, we've seen powerful women whose family have taken advantage of the power.
Well, I have not been embarrassed about saying it, but everyone has in my family has seen it as a charge from God. So if it is a charge, if it is a trust, then you absolutely cannot even think of abusing it. That's too dangerous. That would be the most treasonous thing to do, to try to abuse a trust.
Fantastic. Hashtag CJ Pasi Sereno. When you leave office in 2030, describe what you leave behind.
Consistency for 18 years, upholding the Constitution, a life of integrity, outward and inward, and unwavering fealty to those I love, God, family, and of course, my expanded family now, the judiciary, and the closest friends I have.
Fantastic. I mean, we hope to see this happen, and you certainly are in a position to do it. My last question is this now, 3 years in, and now we're moving to 2016, a new president is coming. You will swear in 4, I think, right? If the timing is, if everything goes as planned, you will live through, you're now more powerful than the next president, than the president after him, than the president after him or her. I have to say her. When you look forward now, what is the biggest hurdle getting to your 2030 goal? The one biggest hurdle?
I always live with a sense that there is always danger around the corner. And so I don't live my life in a careless manner. And that danger can partly be physical. It can also be an operation intended to entrap me or lead me to do something that is wrong. So I have created a system of not only physical security, but I have surrounded myself with very skilled professional men and women whose primary responsibility is to make sure that the Chief Justice does no wrong. If there is any one official in government who must not be associated with any wrongdoing or any failure of wisdom, it must be the Chief Justice. So the expectation also on the part of those who surround me is quite high. And so as long as God, who I credit with protection, ensures that these people are there to always help me, and that He orders circumstances in a way that I am not unduly exposed to danger, then I think we will be able to overcome, and we will reach 2030, and that people will be satisfied, and Filipinos will be able to say that indeed constitutionalism works when a public officer considers a public office as a trust and discharges it according to that very humbling perspective. It's a humbling perspective. Then it will bring about the best in public governance.
Fantastic. Thank you so much
Thank you,
for your
Marie.
time. We've been speaking with Philippine Chief Justice Maria Lourdes Sereno on hashtag CJ Pasi Sereno on all her plans ahead. I'm Maria Ressa. Thank you for joining us.